Hello, I hope you're having a good day. We're recording this one from my parents' place, if you're curious about the new background. But today we'll be talking about PREPATCH Rogue and trying to do it pretty quick. So here we go. Before we begin, I do want to thank the people shown on screen here. A lot of what I will be discussing can be attributed to these people. If you want to learn more, feel free to check out the Ravenhold Discord and or Wowhead guides for more information. Starting with Subtlety, we're going to use Secret Technique on cooldown inside of Dance, preferably within 2 finishers if we're playing Supercharger. Inside of Shadow Blades, we want to use 2 dances and Secret Technique. With enough haste, you can fit 2 Secret Techniques inside of your Blades window. This is because our Sec Tech cooldown is dynamically reduced dependent on the amount of haste we have. However, I found this is typically only consistent inside of Lust, so if you only get 1 Sec Tech off inside of your Blades window, that is a-okay. Use Black Powder on 2 targets, Eviscerate on 1, then use Shuriken Storm on 2 or more targets outside of Dance, otherwise Backstab. Inside of Dance, use Shuriken Storm on 3 or more targets, otherwise Shadow Strike. And always finish at 6 or more combo points. For our hero talents, use Coup de Grace when it's available as Trickster. As Deathstalker, use Eviscerate to consume your Darkest Night on cooldown, except for large AoE. Now I don't know how many targets counts as large AoE, but the idea here is that when you Eviscerate on your Darkest Night, you're not doing any AoE damage. So eventually, when there are enough targets, the damage from Black Powder outweighs the value of consuming your Darkest Night. Now when this happens, what you can do is when you have your Darkest Night buff available, Shadow Strike a mob. This will apply your Deathstalker's mark and give you some of the benefits of your hero talent tree, and then just spam Black Powder. Next, macros are good. Now the reason I say this has to do with 2 reasons. The first is that our 2 major damage modifying cooldowns are off the global, right? Shadow Dance and Shadow Blades. The second reason this is meaningful is because our dance window is extended by haste. So what that may entail is that with enough haste, you may get to a point where you can squeeze in an extra global inside of your dance. But maybe there's not a lot of wiggle room to achieve that. And if you spend the first half second, 3/4 of a second of your dance window pressing all of your off global abilities, right? You're pressing your dance, trinket, pot, racial, shadow blades. By the time you actually get to pressing globals, you've effectively already lost a global in that window. So using a macro to simplify things and make it so that you can immediately start using globals the very moment you enter your dance is good. Next for talents, Deathstalker is slightly ahead in single target for PREPATCH. Both hero talents are competitive in Mythic Plus. Awesome talent strings in the video description if you want to take a look. For stats, agility is king, and then in single target, haste is actually our best stat. Funny enough. Now the reason for this has to do with our Sec Tech cooldown and also our Shadow Dance being extended, but also the absence of our Apex talents happens to give haste additional value. This is followed by Verse, Crit, and then Mastery. Then in Mythic Plus, we see a stat breakdown which is a lot more familiar to what we're used to, but we still get value from haste. It's just less valuable in AoE. But as always, for the most accurate information, use raid bots to sim for yourself. Then for trinkets, on the Mythic Plus side of things, we see a pretty familiar trinket breakdown regarding what's good. So if you were running double on use from last season, or you're playing like a Lily, Ned the Prism, Antenna, all those trinkets are still good. In Raid, it's a little different. We are leaning now in the direction of trinkets that just do damage, as they seem to perform better for us. But a notable trinket across both Raid and Mythic Plus here is the trinket off of Dimensius, Screams of a Forgotten Sky. If you have some extra dinars laying around, that might be a good trinket to pick up. And on to Assassination. Now, Assa is pretty much the same as it was in the War Within, minus Shiv. At least with regards to single target, we're going to use finishers at 5 or more combo points, then dump energy whenever you need to spend it into your Envenom. Use Phantom Knives as your primary builder in 2 or more targets, or 3 if you're talented into Blindside, otherwise Mutilate or Ambush. Then use your cooldowns on cooldown, pair Vanish with Deathmark for improved Garrote. Now, one of the changes from War Within is that Assassination rogues no longer, or have lost a lot of their stealth benefits, but not all of them. Namely, we still have our Empowered Garrote, So you're just going to pair that whenever you press your death mark. And whenever you apply it, make sure it ticks throughout its full duration before you refresh a less powerful garrote, at which point you're just going to maintain that and you rupture. Now the biggest difference for this spec compared to the War Within is with the change in use of Crimson Tempest. This ability now spreads our bleeds as a builder and is our highest priority ability in AoE until all targets have bleeds, at which point you then use Fan of Knives as your primary builder. Now I attached several asterisks after this comment because this isn't always true, it's sort of conditional, but I'd say there are two main things that you're looking for. In both Raid and Mythic Plus, it's always correct to spread bleeds on mobs that will live sufficiently long. If you're spreading bleeds to a mob that will live like for 2 or 3 seconds, it's probably not worth the energy. You do get some of that energy back through Venomous Wounds, but it's not nearly as much as it was in the War Within, and the cost to use Crimson Tempest is quite high. Also, they're bleeds, so if the mobs die right away, you're not realizing the damage you've applied to that mob, at which point you probably would have been better just envenoming off your current target and letting Caustic do the majority of that damage for you. The second reason has to do with sort of diminishing returns. Let's say you do a really big pull, and you spend the entire time applying bleeds to that pull. The bleeds you applied at the start are not the same as the ones you applied towards the end, because your first set of bleeds that you're spreading through Crimson Tempest are giving you stacks of sudden demise. You're applying them with a fresh rupture, a fresh garrote, as compared to the 5th, 6th, or 7th press of Crimson Tempest. You're now reaching a point where you may no longer be benefiting from Scent of Blood. The bleeds you're spreading have much shorter duration on them and are effectively less damaging. The mobs could be almost dead at this point, and if they die with your bleeds, that is unrealized damage. Now you can take sudden demise, although in pre-patch we kind of lack the talent points to get all the way down there. It's a bit of a gray area and we don't have exact answers yet. Assassination rogues aren't fully supported by raid bots during pre-patch, but we should have more information come midnight. So just keep that in mind for now. For hero talents, Fatebound outperforms Deathstalker in raid, but you can play either in Mythic Plus. With Fatebound, there is zero gameplay interaction. As Deathstalker, on the other hand, we want to use Envenom to consume our Darkest Night, and a slight optimization here is to actually build to max combo points before using our Envenom, as opposed to just being 5 or more, so much like we did the previous expansion. And of course, if you have Darkest Night available, make sure you use the Envenom and you're not delaying that finisher with like a Rupture or something. Talents. I'll have a list of talent strings in the video description. For single target builds, you should drop Doomblade plus improved poisons for Caustic Spatter and Poison Bomb / Crimson Tempest if there's AoE. For stats, I loosely put this priority here, but note that because Assassination Rogue isn't fully supported on raid bots for pre-patch, I don't want to give a rigorous priority because, well, I don't know. So there should be more information that comes out for midnight. I'll fill you guys in then. For trinkets, it's a lot of what we used in the War Within, nothing super crazy here. Then Outlaw. Use finishers at 6 or more combo points, except as Fatebound, you can dispatch at 5 or more. Now the way Outlaw plays in Midnight is effectively just to use your cooldowns on cooldown. And if no cooldowns are available, press dispatch. This is quite intuitive and similar to majority of DPS classes in the game, but I mentioned it here because it is different from the War Within Outlaw, in which case it was sometimes correct to sit on charges of your Vanish and delay entering crackshot windows if you had other things that were available, like your Killing Spree, like your Coup de Grace. Well, that's not really the case anymore, and crackshot's gone. So use your cooldowns on cooldown. Speaking of cooldowns, Preparation is a new ability we have access to, and you want to use it to reset the cooldowns of these abilities. Next, a couple rules. Adrenaline Rush at 2 or less combo points, Blade Flurry if there's more than one target, and you want to roll the bones if it's not active or at stage 1. Then if playing Keep It Rolling, use at stage 2 or higher. A slight optimization here is if your current roll is stage 2 and the next roll is guaranteed to be stage 2 or greater. This occurs with loaded dice, so if you've recently pressed Adrenaline Rush, you can delay pressing Keep It Rolling until your next roll in case you get a stage 3 or 4 roll out of it. And then I took a screenshot from the Discord. Your opener will look something like this. Your builder priority is as follows. I'm not going to go through it step by step, but if you want to pause and read through it, you're welcome to do so. For hero talents, as I've discussed before, there is no gameplay interaction as Fatebound, As Trickster, make sure you use coup de grace when available. For talents, Trickster is slightly ahead for pre-patch in all scenarios. Like the previous two specs, I'll have talent variations in the video description. Here's a sample AoE build. For stats, Crit is now our best stat and has effectively swapped roles with versatility when compared to the War Within. Followed by it is Haste, which also, similar to the War Within, we want a certain percent to reach the fastest possible global within our Adrenaline Rush. However, it's a little bit softer than it was before because our AR uptime is much less. And in fact, for pre-patch, it's actually simming quite well to pretty aggressively ramp up the haste, going upwards of 30% in some cases. But the best thing to do here is to check for yourself, which you can use raid bots to do. For trinkets, not a lot to talk about here, pretty similar to how it was in the War Within. And that's it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comment below or come watch me on Twitch. I'm happy to answer any questions as you might have while I stream. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.